Hey everybody, DayTraderRockStar with a market update going into the CPI numbers tomorrow and the Fed FOMC meeting on Wednesday. Tomorrow's the bigger of the events. The CPI is going to be coming out at 8:30 Eastern Time. Hopefully you could join me. We trade the report at 8:30. We'll be in the markets at 7:30 tomorrow at DayTradingRadio.com. If you're not familiar with the show, stop by. We have a show running since 2007. Every single day we trade the markets. We have a great community of traders. Let's get right to the call here, though. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen with the results of the CPI, but the market moved up today, and kind of in a bullish fashion, closed on the highs. The talking heads out there, kind of talking about a softer number, which would be bullish for the markets, but that's not guaranteed. But I do have some levels that I want to talk about, and these are important levels. So we're going to look at, first of all, this chart you see is a chart that I use. This is the S&P cash chart, and I use this a lot, and that's why there's a lot of lines on it. And it might be too many lines for some people, but the main lines are the thicker lines. There's a big downward channel here. This big blue one down here. This is a big channel. Whenever we break down out of a channel line and come back into it, this is a capitulation move out of a standardized channel, and we always trade when we come back in. Now, that's a long time ago. We came back to it again. You see how we held it even though we dropped it here? That trend line is still valid. All trend lines are valid, especially if they break down and you come back up to them. So we have a situation now where we're dealing with this rising trend line. You can see a pivot there, a pivot here, the low pivot here, another pivot right here. And we just started to break down through it. Now, this is also a breakout of the larger pivot to the downside. So we broke out and we came back. So we're actually what I call an X marks the spot. We have a rising upward channel line, and we have a downward channel line, which we're coming back and retesting, and it causes an X. And that's called our X marks the spot. Our X marks the spot area. And we like that. And our target for this little pullback was at 39.38 if we did break down. So we are chopping around that. Now, we're going to look at the 60-minute time frame. This is going to play out tomorrow. Our targets, whenever you break down through a channel line, and this is a rising channel line, we look for a retest. So back here, we look for that retest, and we actually just about got it. Pulled back. Now I said, maybe if we get back up to it again, it would be a good short again. We never got back up to it. We got up to the 50 and pulled back. Now, my target for the report tomorrow would be this: a move up to that 4,000. And again, this is on the cash. We closed at 39.90. So a move up to, we'll call it 4,010. You know, that's a 20-point move. So say we have a soft number in the CPI and we gap up 20 points, which is not a lot, but that's very realistic on the S&P. I would consider this level to watch for a market reaction. Now, depending on how the news is, news could be extremely bullish, could be extremely bearish. We'll talk about the bear side of things. If the inflation is still piping hot and things don't look as good as they did. Another thing we have to look back here is back on the 10th. If I go back on the 10th, last month, right here is when we had the CPI report for last month. And you can see the market had a huge rally. Beautiful, big rally. Biggest day we've had in a long time. And we went up a few more days and then pretty much chopped around. But look where we are. If we put that line right here, we were basically right at the same level we were after the last CPI. Now, let's just talk about the targets, and I'll let you go. Again, looking to possibly short or take a head short into this area, which is around the 4,010 area, give or take a couple points, this line. It could happen fast, and we'll see if it can, just like here, and then we can reverse off of it. To the downside, it's a little bit more interesting. The 38.50 area brings us down to this big gap, what we call a gap support zone. The gap support and the gap resistance. If you're heading up into a gap zone, if you're trying to head up, the first area you're going to hit is resistance. If you're coming down to a gap zone, the first area you're going to be looking at is gap support. So 38.60 is a gap support level. Now that would be that's a big move down, and that's probably not going to happen in one day. I have some other lines here, some big, this brings us, this big black line right here brings us back to October 31st, Halloween area, where we topped out and then we kind of put in a double top. And there's definitely an area here, as you can see, we finally broke out of it and came back and tested it. and then we've been holding right above it. So I would continue to watch the 39.10 area. So 39.10, that's about an 80-point drop if we ended up getting down there. But the real level I'm going to be watching is this pop up here to that, what we just talked about. And again, you can see it better on the 60-minute. You can see it better on the 60-minute time frame here. So again, give or take a few points. These are not, absolute values. I always say hand grenades and horseshoe rules. You have to be close, give or take a few points. But that would be an area I'd be probably taking a small short into to see if we get a reaction off of that. If the numbers are really good and we blow through this, then we'll reevaluate. The other interesting thing is the hourly is now overbought. We had a nice rally off the hourly. And the other thing I will say is the daily, for the first time in a long time, since October lows, have we been oversold. Oversold is underneath the 20 line here. So with that being said, we have an interesting setup on the daily. Very bullish, possibly very bullish. Again, you can see some other trend lines way above us are going to be targets down the road. This one would be 41, above 4150. Depending on where we are when we get there. If it's a fast move up, it'll be lower. If it's a longer move up, it'll be up here. So that's another. That red line is an important line too. So right now we have this black line right here on the 60-minute time frame. We're going to be watching that tomorrow. We have that number 4,008 to 4,010, give or take a few points to the downside. We have that 39. We'll call it 39.10 area to the downside, and we'll see. After that, we have Wednesday in the Fed, the FOMC rate decision and their comments at 2 o'clock, and then 2:30, Jay Powell will be on with a press conference. So that's what we're going to be trading the futures off of tomorrow. We had two great trades today, two divergence trades. I'll probably set up another video for that. I want to get this out to you. I hope you see it at DayTraderRadio.com tomorrow morning, and we'll talk then. Have a good evening.